And people popping in later, we just in.
Yeah. Jack has been busy with the parsers, so. Okay. I don't know if I should start with that, but I'm behind on my homework and that I still need to specify better my issues and didn't finish the detailing the scenario, but I still have some new elements which are related. But anyway, I think what needs to happen is maybe we should go through the list of questions on the alignment matrix and make sure we all mean the same thing by the sentences.
Please, yes.
My proposal.
One thing that I noticed was we've got the two tabs, and on the CDL MVP tab, the row for data format first, row number 7, which I think means we should work on the interchange format. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think it means more like really get a formal argumentation model first, like a data model.
So
and then build everything on that. That's my understanding.
Okay. I was going to say I saw a lot of green there, and so if that one is related to the argument interchange format, that might indicate that the place to start is the interchange format. But
by the way,
I'm wrong.
I hope I'm right that this is about CDL MVP. I just changed the name of the tab this morning because the tab was unnamed, but I now see the canonical debate platform in A1, which I had missed.
Oh, I added that after you changed the name of the tab.
So I hope we all agreed that this is what the tab is about.
Yeah, and I was always confused by their many like very, very specific claims that, yeah, I don't know.
I thought we went specific too fast, yes.
Yeah, right, because it depends on so many things, like I couldn't really give an answer.
Many times my reaction was, let's unask that question and back off too many assumptions.
Well, that might be my fault. I mean, I have felt at times the reverse, where from the comments that I've seen and the exclamations I've seen, it has seemed to me that there have been rows where someone is saying no because they're referring to one aspect of a generalized row, and someone's saying yes because they're referring to another aspect of a generalized row. So I have an instinct towards clarifying to ensure that we're all talking about the same thing. So, you know, we can always dial back. I have no pride about any of this.
Okay, let's decide about the agenda first.
Yeah.
About today.
So
yeah, sorry.
No, I'm saying let's actually go through each of these and make sure we're aligned. Like say, what do we think we mean by this? Who put this here? What do they mean? And let's make sure we all agreed on that.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. To speak to what you're saying before about the name, about what the tabs are about, I think on Slack, Stephen and I, and maybe you, Mark, were discovered that we were unclear, that there was a lack of clarity about
I was there, yeah.
The single tab that we started with was, so we split it into one tab for the argument interchange format and the other tab for the canonical debate platform. So that came out of Steve and I, and so I think your assumption was right on renaming that tab as you did.
Yeah, and I wonder if we need a separate tab for SL work, Society Library work.
But that may be on a separate sheet.
I'm cool with that.
So do we want to just start from the top on the argument interchange format tab?
Sounds good. I think a lot of good discussions will arise from there.
We could just, I don't know, there's several ways to do this. I hate talking through things if no one really wants to talk about it. So line number 2, everyone says no or don't care. So there doesn't seem to be any discussion there. Row 3.
Yeah. I think generally the discussion there was in an interchange format, there will be some claims linked to user IDs. We cannot require it in general. I think that one is pretty uncontroversial, that it's something that may happen. Oh no, it's not uncontroversial. Sorry, there's a lot of no's. There's a lot of don't cares. And okay, so I'm the one who says it's required.
I think
it's
the questions are hard to answer if we don't share common goals. So maybe we should talk about the goals of such an interchange format first. And then, because these are like very implementation things that help us achieve the goal or not. Or
so should we go to the scenarios then? Because they might define the goals.
I don't see the scenarios leading to the goals.
Okay, fair
At
enough.
least my understanding of scenarios were they were examples of arguments, not sets of features.
I think it's a good prompt, Felix. When I had the idea of an argument interchange format, obviously something you guys have been talking about since before Gene and I came in, and so what my gloss on what that's about has been is some sort of file format that one argument platform can export and another argument platform can import. And in my head, that interchange format is probably going to have some subset of the info, some subset of the data that each platform is working with. Inevitably, each platform will have some things that aren't supported by the interchange format. And that's the purpose. So that's what I have guessed. So I'm curious if that's right.
I would also. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been pushing. I mean, that's my pet project is the argument format, and it's not at all. I very much see it as a data bus, event streaming based, so that we can have my dream. And speaking of goals, right? We're all building platforms, and I think it's perfectly fine that we're all building platforms because we have different visions of UX. And I think a diversity of UX is useful in that we'll put different things in evidence and we'll emphasize different interactions. And so my goal would be that if we can agree on a data bus, it would be possible to tell people, oh, here's data, fill it in one of the tools, and then view it in this tool to do this analysis, and view it in that tool to do that analysis. So, and maybe it will be modified in that tool and that analysis, and that would still be reflected. I would like to have a kind of unified data pool so that each of our tools' analysis specificity can both shine and benefit from other people's work. That's my far off dream. In the meantime, what I think is important is that we're all data silos. Hello, Jimmy. We are discussing goals.
Hello.
And because we want to make sure that we align on what the rows of the alignment matrix are. So that's what we're doing. So we all have, so the ultimate goal is data interoperability in real time.
You muted.
Sorry. The proximate goal is we all have data silos, and ideally it should be possible to import. And yes, that can be done with the file format, though I would prefer something closer to an API where we can transform data. But for me, round tripping is important. Being able, it's not just import, it's round tripping import, so that we can, do a start something here, do a manipulation there, and come back with the results of that.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. The data bus characterization is very in line with what I was about to add to that. But being able to round trip data back and forth, absolutely in line on. I'd also say that to the extent it's possible, I'd like to be able to use it as an offline export of our data store. There may be issues with that, so perhaps it needs to be a related format or whatnot. But that's why I like being able to add platform-specific data. And obviously that probably wouldn't be the data bus format, but being able to reuse that format, which is probably something like a JSON format or something rather than just a flat file, would be beneficial from our side.
Right. So to put a finer point on that, there are two phases that we're talking about here, where the first phase is what's been ongoing for years. While we have multiple platforms or versions or attempts at a canonical debate type thing, we need a way to everybody mutually benefit from whatever arguments or debates are entered into each one, right? And so we're all going to share that data, and we need the interchange format to do that. And that's what makes round tripping necessary, and brings up the questions of, well, you know, the variations and features on each site. How do we manage that? What's going to be the core set of data that everyone must support, essentially? And then phase two, if we ever get there, would be now we have a core central in terms of nobody is storing stuff elsewhere, canonical debate. And then you only need like a way to get the data out so that different views or representations can pull it out and use it. Then you don't need round trip, but it's imagined that, you know, a layer 2 application would be able to contribute to the debate itself, right? But it would get stored there, and it wouldn't be a round trip sort of thing. Is that everybody in agreement with that characterization?
No.
Yeah, I let Marc-Antoine disagree, but first I'd like to add that I see two different aspects here. Like, one is the interchange format, which means like, okay, how do different applications interop? And the second thing is like the argumentation model itself, which can be distinct, but the interchange format depends on this argumentation model. And I think the argumentation model itself is the base of everything. It's the base of the format, it's the base of UIs. And so I think this is like the core thing we need to agree on, and then we can continue like how this model is shared. Like, then we can answer this question, like, should the user ID in there, and so on.
Agree on the two layers, like the data model is more urgent than the interchange format. Tim, I agree with the first phase. Second phase, of course, this is our usual centralized versus federated debate.
Right, but we could agree to this, to saying that like when you talk about federated, you're talking about more an architecture in a way of, okay, you can temporarily play around with these claims or whatever and then put it back in, and it becomes sort of an eventually consistent view of the ongoing debates everywhere.
And I'm thinking distributed
I would still
web.
consider that, yeah. I mean, okay, I get that point. I don't even want to argue it right now because it's close enough, and there's a lot of details that aren't worth going into at this moment. But yeah, I understand. I accept that.
And I accept that, you know, your view has like centralized has value. I'm not saying let's not do centralized. I'm saying we probably want both, or I want both personally. But I agree that what you said about the goals of centralized is at some point it's possible for me to interact with another data store, is what you were saying. You said a centralized data store, I said another peer data store. That's a detail, but interact with another data store is a goal. One thing I forgot to add is, for me, a goal, another goal of the interaction model is pull requests. And for me, that's a fundamental use case. Like, somebody has a model of how things are, I can do a fork, say, oh no, this is how I see things, and make it a pull request, and then people can debate, okay, do we include that modification? I want a GitHub model.
Yeah, it sounds like we're jumping around. Can we just go through them in order and ask questions? I think we talked about goals enough.
I think this is about saying, in what context are these things? What's the context for these things?
I would just find it easier to understand that when we're going through it, because we often don't know our differences in context until we hit an example. But that's just my preference.
Can we say that this discussion is focused on the round trip phase one that we were discussing. Like this is what we would need to be able to do a round trip between all our different systems, right? So that we can all share data.
And maybe even more on the shared data model. What is a claim? What is an argument? What is, you know, what
I think
the
this
distinction
can be
Felix.
separated. Yeah, right.
And maybe, yeah, maybe we should. Okay. Well,
I would add one thing to what Felix had said. Like I fully agree on the difference between the model and the format and the primacy of the model, but I would disagree that that we have to resolve the model first to discuss the format. Like to me, like even just talking about a simple claim, there's quite a few thorny details to work out. You know, like how you reference you know disambiguated entities and things like that that we could make real progress on without sorting out the model, for instance.
Agreed.
I do think that understanding how to disambiguate, for example, it's a model level discussion personally, because I'm thinking of model level solutions personally.
Yeah. Right. In support of that, the most productive way I've seen it is when somebody provides an example. It's like, this is my proposal for that. And then somebody can come back and say, yeah, but doesn't work for this, right?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, a format is an implementation of a data model. You can't do one without the other. I don't think it matters which one we talk about first, because you'll have to talk about the other. So
yeah. So yeah, so to go back to the list, I guess there is an agreement that the model must support an interchange format must support expressing certain things, even if not all implementations of the model will have it. And users are a good example of that, right? Some people will have users associated with claims, some won't. So both scenarios must be allowed. For me, it's part of how I think about these features like users.
But I would say, like, there's a question there about the round tripping. Like, there's a minimum set of features all systems must support in order for round tripping to work. Otherwise, a system's going to take in essentially what is incomplete data through their interface, and then other systems will try to pull in that data, and it's going to fail because it's like, you don't have arguments or whatever. You don't have definitions, or something's missing, and it just creates holes in the data that make it less useful. So yeah, we need a minimum round trip set of requirements.
I think that I agree with the basic point. I will make a little caveat that it is possible in some cases to just pass around data you don't understand transparently, and users is a good case of that. Whereas in the case of claims and arguments, if we don't agree on what a claim and an argument is, it'll be very hard to interpret.
May I suggest that we look at formats that already exist, like Git, for example, and see what needs to be different for our use case? What do you think?
I don't know how Git is relevant, to be honest. Though it is, because I'm arguing for stream-based architecture, and that's it
doesn't need to be stream. Yeah, it depends on what you mean with stream-based, of course. But it's you mean like Git is already there to have decentralized version data exchange, which is exactly what we want, I guess. So the question is, how do our requirements differ from what Git already provides?
That's not the direction. I don't think that's the most efficient direction. I'm happy if other people want to do it, but my suggestion on the path forward was we find the smallest nugget of something we can agree on and build up off of that, rather than trying to say, here's all the problems we're going to hit, we must solve them all at once. Can we say whether a claim's going to be, what is a claim? Is it a string of text, or is it something close to Marc-Antoine's kind of format where it's nodes that make up, I would rather work, do a lean startup where you work from what you know instead of what you don't.
Okay, and I say we need to for this to do, we need to figure out the data model first before we work on the data exchange format.
The data model is, well,
Because you
the
posed right
interchange
question,
format
like, what
is a data model. You know, when we talk about how we want to exchange the data, we have to discuss the data model. So I'm not saying we're not discussing the data model.
I'm saying more about the argumentation model, the claim model, how stuff is linked. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, yeah.
The ER relationship of
I assume that's in the
claims
conversation. Yeah.
Arguments, yes.
I think that's part of this. I mean, yeah.
So I agree that we could try to align on a simplistic data model first, and then see how this may be interchanged. So we're all on the same page.
What's wrong with that, Marc-Antoine?
The agreeing on simplistic, the same thing as usual, agreeing on a simplistic data model and not looking at the hard problems is a very good way to hit the problems later and to paint ourselves into a corner.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I want to think about hard problems up front, even if we don't solve them all up front, but I want to think about them up front.
You completely agree. So then that's why I'm suggesting we should do the data model first.
I don't agree. Let me put out a third option, is that we work on the simplest model first, and people make sure that they're more complex. You know, as we're discussing that simple model, each individual is responsible for determining whether that is blocking a future complex one without us having to discuss everything.
Fair enough, but I mean, if there's an objection, it has to be addressed.
Yeah.
Right.
But yes, fair enough. Agreed. We can start. We have to start with the core. That is cool.
Does anyone want to say what a claim is? Is that the core?
It's an emoji, isn't it? Simply a string of emojis?
Yeah, I like that
one. Okay.
That's it. We're done.
Can I propose?
Please.
Yeah, please propose and please show something different than the alignment matrix, because this is distracting from the model discussion, I think.
I won't, for me, claim comes after topic, entity, concept, whatever. We have something that is something we're talking about, and it has attributes, it's involved in associations, it's a part of a graph, and it's got linguistic expression. That includes, and there's a hierarchy of, entities. The claim is saying something is true of an entity, either that an attribute of the entity has a certain literal value, or the entity is part of a certain relationship, association, playing that role in that association with other entities. So that's a claim. And an argument is a kind of claim, which is also a kind of association. Association is a topic, by the way. It's just that some of the attributes are saying, well, there's this entity playing this role, that entity playing this role, that entity playing this role. And so to come back to an argument is a claim that using certain other claims as premises, you can assign a certain truth value or probability of truth value to another claim, which is the conclusion. And that is itself a claim. So that's my definition of the claim entity argument world.
So I don't disagree with all of that or any of that. What I would like to propose is that we've discussed progressive formalization. And so I would start with the least formal, which in my opinion wouldn't go down to that level of detail. It would just be a string of text as the starting point, and without blocking all of that coming on later.
I totally agree. A string of text can represent, let's talk about text, because I was just having this discussion about Jack, because in Jack's data model, And that's what I've been doing this week instead of scenarios. He has string of text as independent entities and then see, oh, this, for example, noun phrase is reused a lot, so let's make it into a topic. And I'm saying, actually, you can make it into a topic directly. It's just that it's a topic of unknown meaning associated with the stream of text until you have found the meaning. I don't know if that's important, but what I'm trying to say is it's always true that a topic is identified by multiple strings of text. There's many ways to name a cat. And so any string of text is something you can talk about and as such as a topic. And then you can possibly decompose, like break it into components, argument, structure, predicate, association, or not. But as it is, it's already a topic. And that way, yes, string of text is a first-class citizen. And knowing this stream of text represents an argument, even if we haven't done the argument decomposition into entities I speak of, yes, absolutely, because progressive formalization, and I'm with you on that.
Now that's interesting because I wouldn't use the term argument for a string of text, just going back to the old CDL
it may be
definition.
An entity, it may be an argument, it may be a claim.
Yeah, I would our original definitions, the CDL thing has a disambiguation saying that an argument is an association of claims. Now a string of text could be, so maybe I need to clarify that. It's a string of text that when correctly edited has a single point and isn't an argument, and then it associates everything. So it can be in a state towards it's being it's badly formed, but when we're talking about the data structure itself, I would call that this unknown string of text of unknown quality, we're calling it a claim, giving it an ID and associating it to other claims, and the association between multiple claims is a quote argument term.
Yeah, some strings of text are claims and some aren't. But I think it's entirely possible to express an argument as a string of text. And sometimes we'll find expressions of the argument as text before we string them together as here are the underlying claims strung together.
Yes.
So I would. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to say that when you're entering it into this system, the intent is when they enter a string of text, they're entering what they think is a claim and not an argument, and not a.
Okay,
So the question here is, like, for something to be a claim, does it need to go through a phase of validation of, this is a good claim, this is an actual claim, rather than somebody putting in a recipe or something, right?
That's a good question.
Can the system take in a recipe, call it a claim, and pass it on to other systems with an ID and a string?
And I would say sure.
Oh,
could happen.
Oh God.
No, it's a real question.
Well, there's no way around it until we have a really good AI. I mean, but the question is, what's the intent of the user? Are we forcing the user to think of it as a claim at that point, or are we saying enter any string of text and then we're going to have an edit thing? But I would still say if we're gonna have that upfront validation, I'd rather that be a different object that says, hey, here's a string of text, and now we've intentionally said, oh, we think we've broken that up into claims, and claim is our claim object, and claim goes into arguments. And I don't know what to call that first thing, but I'd rather
so it has the intention of being a claim, whether it succeeds at that intention.
Yeah.
Right. It's something that somebody entered with the intention of it being a claim.
Probably shouldn't be called a claim then, unless someone actually can commit to the format of whatever is determined to be a claim, which the Society Library already has a definition of. So this is about refining data architecture so that we can share data. Just checking in.
Yeah.
So I'm running around. Okay.
I think
from first principles. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think this is very much whether we allow people to enter text which is not, for example, a claim, that's a UX application-specific problem. What we agree in the data format, it's important that it's possible to say this is a string of text of which we think it's a claim because we ask the user to enter it as a claim, or this is a string of text of which we don't think of it, it's a claim. Maybe we think of it, we don't know what it is at all, or we think it might be an entity, or it might be an argument, or it might be something else. But being able to distinguish those, like expected intent and maybe no expectation of intent.
And
Right.
maybe I think it's important maybe to clarify though that I think Jamie's term a claim is completely different from what we're doing here. Because she's saying a claim like X person said this, maybe. I don't know, Jamie, I could be wrong. As opposed to we're saying, you know, this is a claim of fact.
So a claim in the Society Library's terminology, first we have 3 different types of claims: a derived, implied, and implicit claims, depending upon how much information is in the string of text and who put it there. And so a claim for us is an assertion of truth by its smallest unit. So the smallest assertion of truth in a natural language snippet. And then we combine claims together in order to create argumentation, or an argument. A derived claim is when we pull something and we can use relatively the same amount of words and types of words and the words themselves in order to recreate the claim as self-contained. Implied means that given that we have identified this derived claim, these are implied claims such as the inversion of that claim that our analyst just wants to capture just for the sake of capturing data so we don't have to redundantly find it in the wild. And then there is an implicit claim, which means a claim that must be expressed in order for the argumentation to make sense, but the person did not express that. So we're going to express it, but identify it as something that we've expressed in order to make the logic make sense, as opposed to, you know, having to find a better argument in the wild in order for it to have representation. So I've posted our packet multiple times, and we teach this at 20 universities, how we identify claims and arguments and implied and derived and yada, yada, yada.
Right.
So it's in that
But,
packet.
Right, but the point is that it's a different definition. It includes process and includes a relation to external media.
A claim's a claim. You know, whether it's derived, implied, or implicit, at the end of it is a claim.
the question is if someone says a claim 2 different ways, if one person says it one way, one person says it another, it's still the same claim. Or although we're going to get into that problem because we're doing a string of text.
Yeah, there would be variations of the same claim.
For a strategy point of view, I'm just, when I think about the argument interchange format, and I think about the ways in which I've used interchange formats, you know, in other types of work that I've done, like the way that I lean in terms of strategy for designing such a format would be to go as flexible as possible. And you know, start as minimal as possible and go as flexible as possible. I'll be curious. I'm curious to hear why. But in my mind, like starting in a place where it is a sort of the minimum lingua franca between us creates more opportunities for adoption, and the more it's adopted, the faster it's adopted, the more useful it becomes. And then if there are ways, if it is flexible, if there are ways that our platforms don't yet align, you know, we can find ways on the import and export interfaces to still make it useful for us, you know, even for features that aren't fully supported by the interchange format.
What exactly do you mean by flexible? What's your, so we understand what you're saying.
Sure. For example, like something like validating whether this is actually a claim. Like that's something I imagine happening on the platform side of things. So the way the platform is dealing with the user is dealing with whether this is a valid claim to the degree to which the platform wants to. But then if the platform wants to export an argument, a bunch of claims connected in some way, the format, all it cares about is each claim has a string in it. And then the argument can put in, the platform can put into that string whatever it wants. And then when someone's importing it, you know, if they want to, you know, say they have to have a character limit on their claims, then on the importer side, they're going to have to deal with it when a claim comes in that's too long for their system, and then the importer's going to have to deal with how to reconcile the difference between the lingua franca and the particular platform. I'm not like religious about that idea. That's just how I default from. I've done a lot of work with computer graphics, and there are formats like this. You know, that's a natural metaphor in my mind, and that's how they tend. The successful ones tend to be very flexible.
So what you're proposing, just want to be sure I get you well, is allow text but allow anything in there, right? Which may be language or maybe a JSON complex format.
Oh, that's a step further, which is
which I
maybe
would not agree with,
my,
but I want to know if that's what you meant.
That wasn't my intention. It was like encoding computer code into the format. That's a little bit beyond my, you know.
It's not what I would favor.
That wasn't what I had in mind. That wasn't what I had in mind.
String of text.
No. But yeah, a string of an unlimited string of, yeah. And,
yeah, but I think we need to be like, okay, so we could define in the interchange format, we have a claim, right? You can have a claim, and that's got an ID, and it's got a string of text. And you have a comment, and that's designed as an ID and a string of text, right? They match, they're the exact same design. They're the exact same elements. But the intention makes all the difference, right? And so I think we need to be evolving what is required to have in the claim model and in other models, but also be clear on what the intention is that goes along with that. Otherwise, you just get things that don't match. In the case of Society Library, there's a lot of overlap with claim. But for example, one thing we should bring up then is, does the CD interchange format need to support designation of implicit claim versus explicit claim, things like that?
I think we need to go there, but maybe I'd still like to focus in on the text thing before we jump to that. And so Marc Antoine's question was good, that he put in the chat, that that our definitions of claims in general seem to be compatible. We're saying
which I think
the base idea is a string of text that we know some human somewhere has attempted to make it a single idea of saying a statement of fact, right?
This is something true about the world.
Yeah. And it's just a string of text, and it has no other.
Yeah, I still, it's at least a string of text, and I would say a string of text and maybe analysis thereof optionally. So that's what I would say, and that's why
I would say that would be something.
The same as a mathematical statement.
Okay, and that's a good question. A mathematical statement is a stream of text after all, but it's also easier to analyze formally than a linguistic statement.
No, I meant more like from the definition of a statement, something that's either true or false, even though we don't know.
True. Yeah, that way, yes.
Okay.
But by saying either true or false, do you mean to exclude things that are intentionally, not trying to make a truth claim, like a question?
I would say a question is not a claim.
A question
it's something
is not
else.
a claim. That's yeah. By the definition, like a question is not true or false.
And a claim is not just a mathematical statement. It's when I'm making the claim, I could just say this claim is under debate, and then I'm not making any statement about the truth value of the claim. I'm just putting it in the system. Or I could say, and that's what I'm calling a claim, I'm making this claim and I'm saying I believe it's true, which is different. Or I could say, and that's a different claim, I believe Felix believes this claim is true. Whether I do or not is another story.
Well, yeah, and I would almost want to keep it separate of who thinks it's true. Just someone somewhere thinks X is a true thing about the world, or someone has expressed that.
Well, people's mental states is a part of about the world.
It's a separate claim.
Right. It's a separate
different claim.
Yeah. Yeah.
So agreed there, but what do we call the more general text, the stream of text that could be something like a question, right? Because some platforms will want to represent that as well, including my source.
Right. So that's the next step is, that's a separate element. And do we want to support, for example, something like a question?
So, but right, yeah. So I think we'll have other elements that will fit into. But back to what Marc-Antoine was saying is that it could be a string or a more complex data format. I would like to have that the string is, and I may have misunderstood, that the string is there and then it can have an analysis data
I think it's what I said, yes. I'd say string is probably always there. I don't know what we mean by or, right? Which part is required? Probably only one is required. I expect there will always be a string because there will always be a end user legible interface, and optionally a formal analysis if possible, and probably many formal analysis because we'll never be sure. And I'm beginning to think, this is just me changing my position, this is not maybe we want to separate the truth value so that we can have questions in the same, like we could have what was called the posit, like the claim posit, like the claim substance, and then true, false question, likely, unlikely modalities, maybe in an alternate universe as a separate aspect of the claim. That's the whole discussion we had about separating the negation from and that allows us to have question, and it's something we can express.
Debate map already has that too. Per claim, you have negation and you have the question form of a claim packaged in every node.
Liking that.
Which is good. Yeah, I just wanted to, because I've seen Marc-Antoine's hyper knowledge model, and for every topic you have a truth value, right? Yeah, and you're like distancing now from
no, not for every
No?
topic. Absolutely, no, only for claims.
Ah, okay, good.
I don't have a truth value. You could say I exist has a truth value, and you could equate those, but you know.
And let me clarify one little thing. When you said true or false, where it's something that could be a gradation in between, right? Of
Absolutely.
probability.
Absolutely. And for me, when I say a claim has an originator. I don't, and this is a difference I have with Tim, I don't believe that claims exist in abstracto. For me, they're always true to a community, to an observer, to blah, blah, blah.
Or true under certain.
I never said that. Yeah, I never said truth was like objective or separate from person.
Interesting. But
no,
you want to separate the person from the claim in your data model.
The creator, yes. I don't think it matters if the person who submitted it agrees with it or not. I think it's each person states their own or maintains their own agreement or disagreement to whatever degree.
Fair. Okay, then we agree. I agree that the creator is much less relevant than the original enunciator, which is totally different. And maybe there isn't. Maybe it's a community, it's common knowledge, and there's no notion of who the original enunciator is. And that's fine.
The Society Library has a virtue and value around this, which is essentially the truth is the truth no matter who says it. And in order to obfuscate the relevance of who states a claim, we look for multiple sources to corroborate on a claim having been said. But there are some instances in which who says it is critical, but from what I understand, you may be expressing that as a claim itself, as opposed to a feature of a claim.
Totally.
Is it critical because of disambiguation, what was meant, or is it critical because that this person says this implies something else, which is itself a separate claim, right?
That's actually a really, really great disambiguation, Tim. So I think, one, the opportunity to be able to trace back for disambiguation and clarification is actually very important. So at least in the Society Library, we keep track of those things. Not only who is extracting, but the originator and author of said claims. But also, there's some instances where like the person's reputation is the only piece of evidence that suggests that something is likely to be true. Like if something is novel and new and whatever, and there's actually no evidence, but it's expert opinion, there is something to be said about expert opinion, even though oftentimes it's fallacious if people refer only to the opinion itself. But if that's all you got, and that's the best evidence you have that something is true, that this person's an expert or has experience or saw it or whatever, then that is something that needs to be captured. Whether that's just a feature of the like a data feature of the claim or a claim unto itself, though, I guess could go either way.
Yeah, I would tend to make it a claim unto itself. Like the fact that, you know, so somebody said this and then somebody said this. Well, if the first person is a serial liar, you want to check whether that person indeed said it. And if that...
Yeah, this has come up in mapping that I've tried out, which is like so-and-so said this, and that's racist, right? Then the debate is about what they said and what they meant by it, right?
Which is a separate,
It's
a separate claim.
A separate debate, yeah.
Yeah,
Lots of variations.
What they said, did they really say it? What did they mean? Another claim.
I just want to flag for the group that we have about 12 minutes till the next hour. You know, at that point we'll have been on for an hour, and I'm excited about the idea of the interchange format, and I'm excited about this approach of determining our alignment on these things. I feel like I'm getting to know you guys and what everyone believes and feels from this. So I'd be excited for it to continue. And so I would propose that in the next 10 minutes, we talk about how to move this forward for next week. I mean, I heard today there was discussion of whether we should be talking about the data model first or the argument interchange format first. And I don't know that we resolved that. From what I heard, I'm more convinced on, me personally, I'm more convinced on starting with the interchange format first. And I'm also feeling like I'm not certain that we have alignment on the sort of goals and strategy of an approach of designing the interchange format. Like, what are the goals of the format? Like, there's many ways to do that. So I'm wondering if if you guys, you know, if that's what you guys want to move forward with as the next priority. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can align on something a little bit more high level about this format.
Okay, first, I've written a lot about the interchange format, and I think I would ask you to have a look. I'll resend some of those references, but they're in my one-pager. There's links in my one-pager. I will commit to giving a ER diagram of what I see as the underlying data model
I think this would
by
help.
next week.
And I think when we're saying data model, I would say the data model of the interchange format and not the data model of CDL or any of our systems, just to be clear. And
yes.
so Felix's point,
helpful.
I think people were getting confused because the discussion started going into, you know, are we going to use XML and stuff? We didn't go there, but, you know, we were discussing the architecture of the data model. The architecture of the interchange format, and Felix wanted to focus on the data model of the interchange format. So I can see that as a good clarification. So I was going to just add a tab for, although maybe it's better to just have one of us, like Marc-Antoine said, come in with a proposed data model, and then we can discuss it. Maybe that's easy.
And maybe Tim should also do his ER data model so we can compare and find the discrepancies. I don't know how you feel about that, Tim.
Yeah, I can do that. It's been evolving in my head, so
it's also been evolving in my head.
Yeah, so I have to rethink a lot of things.
Same.
You know, and I haven't decided if argument is a claim, and I haven't resolved the problem of claims referencing claims. Those are things. I don't know what I'm going to do with those yet, but I could give a shot and then try to go from there.
Yeah, just as a even better clarification of what the difference between the data model and the interchange format is, like, I'd like to go back to Git, for example, like the current directory, the current state of the file system. I mean, is the model, the data model, And the interchange format is Git itself. Like, how is this model distributed?
See, I
That's
would
maybe
call
an
that an
easier way to-
interchange process, not an interchange API, not an interchange format. For me, a format is the file on the computer. It's a format of a file. But
Yeah,
that's
right.
just our
So
different
that's why we
terminology.
need to, right.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, the
That's
data.
what I mean with it, just to make the difference clear.
Yeah.
we're talking
So,
about.
but yeah, I think we could discuss the data model of the interchange format, or the architecture of the interchange format, or we could discuss all those. And I think everyone kind of likes it. We'll start with the data model of the interchange format. Mark Antoine's going to propose one, and then we're all going to shoot it down.
And by the way, if Josh and Jean, you have something in mind, let's have a ER shootout. I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, we could give some think to. I mean, the default in my head is like how to be as flexible and minimal as possible, at least as a starting point. So I could sketch together something that will be horrifyingly simple, and just put that out as a prompt for conversation.
That's cool. We'll discuss
We don't have an existing one, though. I mean, I think
Correct.
looking, if you have an existing format, I think looking at that is a great starting point.
No, I don't have a
Yeah,
fully
for us,
specified
thoughts.
format yet. It's still work in progress, but I can certainly draw the ER diagram now. So
And does your current, so you haven't drawn it yet. So you're going to include the concept of a text box before the analysis, right? Okay.
Yes, it'll be there, promise.
I just didn't want to go back.
And we spend a good bit of time, and I think rightly so, discussing terminology, like on these calls. But I think it would be useful for us to sort of, agree on a set of terminology as we collectively have some of these discussions. Like, it's still not clear to me, like, what claim means in our context here, right? Like, are we talking about that general version? Or are we talking about the version with some sort of truth value, right? If we could just kind of collate what terminology we're agreeing on for the discussion moving forward, I think it would be helpful.
This has been the story of this group, of agreeing on terminology always summons all the disagreement about what we think the thing should do. And so
that's fair. So maybe that's
But
a discussion to have offline too, but I just want us to be talking about something
we do have to
concrete when
progress
we
on
say
that,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have this unfinished glossary document. I don't know.
We should go back to the glossary, yes.
Yeah. A very general thing I'd like to add is like, I think it makes sense to have more one-on-one meetings. Because I think then we'll make real progress. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good to us. Could do subcommittees as
Agreed.
well. Smaller groups tackle little projects. I bring ideas to the larger group.
Yeah, like by interest, of course. But I think like my experience is like, if you have one-on-one discussion, then usually you find something to agree on. And then you have two people behind an idea, and then you can show it to the bigger group or whatever. Tim, you're muted. You wanted to say something? Oh, no. Okay. Yeah.
I can vouch that Tim and I made great progress in a few one-on-ones.
I mean, I don't know how to schedule it. It seems to me like I've seen many times where somebody creates a post and somebody responds and creates a thread, and the thread keeps going back and forth. And that's when I'm like, why don't you just get on a call and resolve it? So there's a spontaneous version that's easier to do, but I don't know how.
Yeah, I think
to
we
do
should
this when
encourage
we all
that
care
more.
about the. Yeah.
Whenever these threads come up, we should encourage more to like, just let's get on a call quickly.
Now the Zoom that we're using for this, as far as I know, as long as it's not used too much, we can, any two people can hop on because it's open, password protected.
And it's not a problem to right now. I'm using Zoom myself with a free account, and there's no time limit whatsoever.
For two people, that's
There's no
good.
time limit?
If
Two
it's
people,
just
right,
two
okay.
people.
I never experienced the time limit actually.
Yeah.
They're usually often, if you don't use it often enough, they'll let you continue the 3-person thing.
And then you can record. So yeah, get your own Zoom copy would probably be the most efficient. And I don't know, it'd be nice if you recorded it and threw it up somewhere, but it's not, necessary.
And for a small number, 3 and 4, 3, 4 people, Felix and I had good success with the free version of Whereby.
True. Or Google Meet or whatever. That people will figure it out.
Or Google Meet doesn't record. So it's the question about recording.
Yeah.
True. I'm not sure Whereby records actually on that now.
You can pay and record.
Although it's not mandatory, so whatever gets the job done.
Cool.
Okay, so I have
Good
homework.
one.
I'm behind on the homework and I have homework.
Yeah.
I did my homework in class.
I'm working hard on the ontology for my 3 layers. That's progressing, at least.
Sounds good. I mean, Marc-Antoine, let's we talk later.
Yeah, as in now-ish.
Yeah. 10-minute break, I suggest.
Ciao, ciao.
All right, cheers,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
For everyone.
Take care, all.
Have a good weekend.
Take care.